everyone. This is Jillian Sidoti with crowdfundinglawyers.net, and this is our segment, People You Should Know. And today's special guest is Elizabeth Breiman from Realty Mogul. Thank you, Elizabeth, so much for being with us today. And I would like to just ask you, what's Realty Mogul all about?
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jillian. You know, I'm a big fan of you and Jean, so it's a pleasure to be here. Little plug for you too. RealtyMogul.com is one of the oldest and biggest real estate crowdfunding platforms in the country. We have raised over $225 million to date, doing equity, preferred equity, and mezzanine financing, as well as doing bridge loans. We target cash flow and commercial real estate in primarily the 4 core product types: office, retail, industrial, self-storage, or apartments. And then we also do some self-storage, and we are a very large investor in a mobile home park fund as well.
So, okay, you said some interesting things there, because you said the properties, and then you also said something about funds. So when a potential real estate entrepreneur comes to you and says, I want to raise money, and I have this property, or I have these properties, what do you prefer as the investor?
Great question. We are 99% of our business doing, or to date, 99% of our business has been doing single asset investing. So we invest in an apartment complex or 2 apartments when they're aggregated. We've done very little by way of raising money for funds for other syndicators. And a large part of that has just had to do with structurally, it's a little complicated. We can't do capital calls the way we're set up. But for the most part, the way we're structured is that a sponsor who is qualified, and for us that means they have at a minimum 25 million in assets that they've acquired as a sponsor entity, and primarily are focused in a particular asset class in a particular market. So if a sponsor comes to us and they're looking to do their first self-storage deal in Arizona, but they're really a multifamily guy in Tampa, that's probably not going to be the deal that we would want to get started with them on. We really like focused, targeted, experienced sponsor who has been doing that particular asset class in that particular market. And if we agree to a project, we like the business plan, we'll agree to come in as a single investor. Basically, we aggregate all of our investors, and we have 25,000 plus accredited, and we have 80,000 including non-accreds, and I'll get to those in a minute. We aggregate them, our accredited investors, solely into a single purpose entity, and then we invest into the title holding entity of the sponsor as one investor. So they get to pay out one distribution, they give one quarterly report, and they do 1K1. So we're treated, basically we're the same as having being a high net worth individual that's coming in for $1 to $3 million on cash flowing, or excuse me, value add equity deals. That's one side of the platform. The other side of the platform is really our most recently launched REIT. So MogulREIT 1 came out a couple weeks ago. We're very excited about it. That's going to allow us to actually raise capital from not just our accredited investors, but also non-accreds. So you don't need to make $200,000 a year to invest in commercial real estate on our platform. You can, it's agnostic as to your income and net worth, unlike the private placements. But we have a minimum investment of $2,500 into the REIT, and we recently just made our first distribution, which was 8% on an annualized basis, and we'll be looking to do quarterly distributions going forward.
Wait a minute. That's you said something pretty amazing there, because didn't you guys go live in like August, or when did you go live?
Yeah, it was in August, and then in the first month we decided, because we're a broker-dealer, we have to be very compliant, and so we were a little limited in how we could talk about the REIT, and wanted to get an early distribution out. So normally investors can expect or hope to expect, although not guaranteed, on a quarterly basis, a distribution. I know I'm using all my securities language as best I can. The regulatory attorney in me can't help it. But we're looking to make quarterly distributions, but we did a quick distribution, and it was on an annualized basis, an 8%. And that was based on a couple of deals that we've already put into the REIT, and we have other deals that we're putting into the REIT. So we had put them in, basically, we had funded them on our balance sheet, and then right after the REIT was launched, we sold them into the REIT.
Okay, so for everybody who's viewing this right now, I just want to explain a couple quick things to you, because this is two attorneys talking, and sometimes that can get confusing. So I want to just tell you what we're talking about. Elizabeth and Realty Mogul put out the MogulREIT under Regulation A+. So it was like a mini IPO, and they were approved by the SEC in August, which now we're only in October, so 2 months, and basically they already knew the properties they were going to do. They flipped them into the fund as soon as they were approved by the SEC, and they immediately started cash flowing. And so Realty Mogul was able to send out a distribution almost right away. That is genius.
Yeah,
really.
Very
yeah, awesome.
Well, and as well, I hate when people use the term that the REIT acquired. The REIT didn't acquire the real estate. Let's just be clear. We're making preferred equity and mezzanine. I said acquired, but the REIT acquires the investment position, basically. So Realty Mogul, the company, makes the investment, holds it on balance sheet, and then can, like, say it's sell into, but basically transfers the investment into the REIT. And that was just done because the REIT hadn't launched yet. But for the most part, or I should say 100% of the time, we're not a sponsor. We're investing in other sponsors' real estate. And in the REIT, it's all cash flowing. So it's either preferred equity or mezzanine. And they both look very, very similar. They're basically, that is in between your senior loan, so your bank loan, or your maybe you have an insurance company loan, but your senior first position debt, and then the equity position of your limited partners. So in between that, it's called sub-debt, and it's just a slice of capital that you can put in between that's anywhere from 10 to 12%. You put that in between them, and if the property is cash flowing well, you're actually increasing your returns to your limited partners by adding a little bit more leverage on it. And the real difference between preferred equity and mezzanine is just whether or not you have an intercreditor agreement with your senior. Mezzanine debt requires it. Preferred equity does not. So they look very similar in so much as you're not sharing any of the upside. You're just basically, as a sponsor or a borrower, you're making payments on it just like you would on your senior debt. You know, every month you pay a coupon on that piece of money. That it's $1 to $5 million that you've either borrowed or had invested by Realty Mogul on a fixed coupon basis.
That's excellent. So, you said there was so much stuff just said there, and I want to go back for a little bit, because does that work for every type of property? What kind of property does that work for?
It works for cash flowing deals. So if you're getting a very low interest rate loan on, let's say you buy a deal, a property at a 6 cap, and you have 4% debt on it, and it's cash flowing quite well, you might be able to put some additional leverage on it to get to, instead of a senior loan, you'll get to 70, 75%. With sub debt, you can go to 80, 85%. That's basically when it cash flows enough to pay for the senior loan and some, that's when sub debt is a good idea. JV equity is the product we use for value add deals where there might not be.
You asked my next question for me. Okay, go ahead. You do the why don't you yourself?
Yeah, we use equity when it's a value add deal because it's a little riskier product in so much as there isn't current cash flow to pay current investors. So that's how we view that. We want to be in a different position in the capital stack.
Okay, so what's next? So how big is the MogulREIT, and how filled up are you now, and how can somebody get into it if they wanted to get into this type of investment?
I love those questions. Thank you for that. It is a $50 million REIT. We are getting invested dollars as low as $2,500. We're a couple $1 million into the REIT so far and growing. So there's definitely room in the REIT, and you can invest with, I think it takes about 5 minutes or less to go
Wow.
online. It's quick. It's very, very quick. I think mine's particularly quick because it's my computer's cached, so all my contact information just populates.
Yeah.
But it's still pretty quick. RealtyMogul.com, and you just click on the link for Invest Now and go through the investment process. One of the big value adds of our REIT as opposed to traditional REITs is that because we are a technology-enabled platform, our REIT is basically significantly different in the amount of fees that we charge compared to a standard traditional offline REIT. We're not using the traditional broker-dealer channel, and traditionally broker-dealers have charged 7 to 8 points fee load on their REIT offerings. So if you look at our REIT, which has a 3-point fee load compared to a traditional REIT, which has a average 15-point fee load, it's a pretty big difference between the amount of fees that most offline REITs have included. So you're looking at 85 cents to 88 cents of every dollar actually goes towards your investment. Whereas with the MogulREIT 1, we're looking at, once fully allocated, I should make it clear that our fee load is based on, there's certain fixed costs, so it's kind of allocated over the $50 million REIT. But once fully allocated, you're looking at around 97 cents.
Oh, that's fantastic. So if you want to get into commercial real estate investing and you don't know how to do it, or you don't want to take classes, this is what I often explain, that people don't want to spend their weekends learning how to invest in commercial real estate. They want their weekends for themselves. So instead of going to real estate seminars, this is a great way to get into that apartment building you always wanted to. And I'm not selling this security, by the way. I want to make that very clear. Just saying.
No, we're not selling. But
$2,500 in 5 minutes is a very low entry point for getting into commercial real estate.
Exactly. It's a passive real estate investment, and that's nice. It also, if you are going the resi fix and flip route, or you are buying into commercial real estate, there's more risk if you're the borrower or the sponsor, because you're taking on the liability of the debt. Meanwhile, if you're investing in something like a REIT, you're not taking on that debt liability. So there's a lot of benefits to doing passive real estate investing, least of which is you just don't have to do much. It's kind of you go in, you invest, and you're not on the hook for toilets, trash, and tenants. I think is the three.
Well, it's so funny because I deal in real estate investing every day. I see a ton of deals, and the reality is my best investments are always with somebody else who takes the reins, where I don't have to worry about the toilets, trash, tenants, et cetera. The ones that have, and I'm completely open about this, the ones that have not done traditionally very well are those that I'm in control of. So I've learned very much the hard way that the best way for me to invest is to give my money to somebody else.
I mean, that's the good news. As I shared, it's 25 million is a minimum for sponsors on our platform. I mean, that's good news for our investors, because they really are investing in the sponsors that have a tremendous track record and experience. We're also pre-vetting our investment opportunities. So our head of credit was 19 years running underwriting at JP Morgan, their CMBS group. So we've got a lot of real estate professionals in our company that are actually doing all the hard work, the heavy lifting of doing the due diligence. And as a broker-dealer, and it's important to share, as our company is affiliated with a broker-dealer, we're actually on the hook or pre-vetting these opportunities and making sure that what we're presenting is really something that's been analyzed and underwritten, and we're not unlike a deal where you're investing straight into a sponsor's transaction. You're getting their numbers, and it's on you as an investor to confirm whether or not they're you agree with them and their assumptions.
Okay, so I have so many more questions for you, and I'm not sure I have all the time. So I'm going to end with this question, and we're going to have to reschedule another interview because this was great and I loved it. And I want to get into the technology portion with you and the technology that Realty Mogul uses. So we're just going to have to come back.
Got it.
But my last question for you is, what books have you been reading? that you could share with our audience that you think that they would enjoy?
First half of that, I'm sorry. What was it?
What books have you been reading?
What books have I been reading? Oh goodness. There's and now I'm going to forget the name. There's a new book that just came out about REITs that was through the REIT Institute. I've been reading that, which is particularly good. I read a lot of business books. I tend to read.
Well, that's what our people want to know. They want to know, what business books are you reading?
Oh, what business books? I just downloaded a few. Oh, now you're going to make me look at my phone and see what books I'm downloaded. Just looked at. Now I'm waiting. Sorry.
No.
The World is Flat. That's one that I just downloaded.
Okay, The World is Flat. Do you know who it's by?
Yeah, it's Thomas Friedman, and it's about kind of the brief history of the 21st century. That is a good one. And then I'm reading another book on REITs.
Oh, fantastic. Well, Elizabeth, thank you so much for being with us today. How can people get in touch with you?
I am pretty easy to find, Elizabeth.Brayman at realtymogul.com, and also on Twitter, Elizabeth Brayman. But if you go to realtymogul.com, I'm all over the website, so not too hard to find.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us today. I'm Jillian Sidoti with crowdfundinglawyers.net, and this is our segment, People You Should Know. We'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.